All right, so you're situated, you're settled in. Do you rent a house or do you rent an apartment?
Yeah, yeah. We rent for about 500 US dollars per month, which is, I think, pretty reasonable. We have a 150 square meter apartment. It's three
Wow.
bedrooms, two baths, so pretty nice. It's furnished like a kind of like a four-star, you know, residential apartment. So yeah, it's nice. It's very modern. It was just furnished just a year or two ago. So yeah, we're happy. This same apartment in a city in America would probably be 2,000 to 3,000 US dollars a month. So we can live very cheaply here. Our dollar goes really far. It's 7 renminbi to one US dollar. So, we just get a lot of bang for a buck, which helps us live here. And, we can make a lower salary than we would in America and, live at a higher quality of life.
Hi, can Ernest and I ask you a favor? If you find our content helpful, please hit that subscribe and like button. It truly helps us grow and it makes Ernest happy. All right, so today we're heading over halfway across the world to this incredible country that I have had so much difficulty finding somebody to interview that lives there. But finally, I found Ben. Ben is the man who is living in China. Ben, welcome, man. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, good to be here. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of people that choose China. I years ago lived in South Korea and loved it. And it's a beautiful country. It's a beautiful part of the world. So let's first start off with a little bit of backstory about you, Ben, who you are, where you're from, and how you landed in China.
Yeah, that's great. So, my name is Ben Cubbage. Welcome, everyone. I have a travel business at elevatedtrips.com. I'm a tour guide here in China, so that's what I do now. But rewinding back, I've lived 15 years in Western China and Tibet. And how I got out here was really just my wife and I were adventure people. We had hiked what's called the Pacific Crest Trail. So that's on the west coast of America. It's about 2,650 miles, about 4,000 kilometers. And we hiked basically from San Diego, California to Vancouver, Canada, about 2,600 miles. And that was a 6-month honeymoon. We love hiking, we love backpacking. From there, we got some certifications in backpacking, rock climbing, mountaineering. And then we met a guy that happened to live in China running a travel business. And he said, "Hey, come work for us." And we're kind of between jobs. We're kind of traveling backpackers, and we said, sure, why not? Never been to China before, never said the word China, didn't speak any Chinese, and just
Wow.
hit the ground in July 27th, 2010. And we've been here, 15 years since, just running the business and doing backpacking. So yeah, yeah.
Wow, okay, so that is so I love that because it's really about you dove in to your passion, something that you truly
Mm,
loved, and then something opened up for you, and it just happened to be China. So China wasn't even on your radar.
yeah,
It's not about we're going to move to China and show everybody else that China
mm,
is a great place
yeah,
to
that's
live
right.
because the narrative says
Mm,
otherwise. It wasn't even about that. It was about you just pursuing your passion, you and your wife pursuing your passion, and then this unfolded. And you moved there 15 years ago.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Okay.
July 2000. Mhm.
Wow. Okay. So was it just you two? Do you have a family? Any kids?
Yeah, we got two kids. My kids are named Phoebe and Bear. We're all American. My wife is American. I'm American. A lot of people ask me if my wife is Chinese, but she's American. Yeah, so we came here, as just a couple, and then we had kids in China. They both have barcode codes that say "Made in China" on them, because they were made in China. So
So they have the dual citizenship. They're a citizen of China
they
and
don't.
no?
It's impossible. China does not do dual citizenship with any other country. So either
Interesting.
you're a China passport holder or you're American passport holder. They're not quite like Europe. They're quite centralized in what they do with their passports. So yeah, we're American passport holders, and we have a work visa to live in China based on our tourism business to live here.
Feeling confused about where to move abroad, which countries you even qualify for, or what your real options are? You're not alone. This is where most people get stuck and where they often waste a lot of time and money going in the wrong direction. That's why we offer two simple ways to help, depending on what you need. First is the Ideal Destination Finder. It's a personalized assessment that looks at your lifestyle, priorities, and budget, and then shows you your top 3 countries. It's designed to help you narrow things down, avoid endless research, and reduce the risk of choosing the wrong place. And if you feel like you need more personalized help, you can also book a one-on-one consultation with me. I'll walk you through your situation, clarify which countries make sense for you, which countries you can actually qualify for, and the next steps, so you're not guessing. Both options are easy to find at adventurefreaks.com. Just scroll down and you'll see the consultation with me to the right. Just click it and schedule your consultation. Over here to the left, you'll see the Ideal Destination Finder. Just click it to get started. Links are also in the description below, or you can scan the QR codes on the screen. Now let's get back to the video. Okay. All right. Okay. So then you moved to China. You had to pick an area of China. China's quite a large country. That's got to be a challenge, but you had a connection that probably said, hey, here's where you want to come. This is what we're going to do. So where did you land in China?
We landed in a wee little village of 2 million people that no one's ever heard of called Xining, China. Xining. It's kind of the Denver, Colorado of China, if you're familiar with the geography of America. It's kind of the Wild West, kind of the gateway to the Wild West, the gateway to Tibet and the mountains and Mount Everest Base Camp and all these kind of wild places. So, yeah, that's the reason we're here. Is there's only 200 foreigners in a whole province of 5 million people, and the province is bigger than. So, it's a big province, not a lot of people, a lot of land. Kind of think Montana or West. Okay. So we landed here, and the reason we came here, the reason we're one of the only few foreigners that live in the whole province in all of Western China, is because we love the mountains. And really that's what our passion was. I was an environmental science major. I was an Eagle Scout. I'm a member of the Explorers Club. So for me, I just love the outdoors. That's kind of my jam. That's my passion. And so that's ultimately why we live in Western China. People say, why do you live in Western China? It's so undeveloped. You have much more culture in Beijing. But for us, it's really about the mountains. We can drive an hour out of the city and we can be at 4,000-meter mountains, just above 12,000, 13,000 feet. So yeah, that's for us. That's what we love, and that's obviously my business, my travel business. I take people into the mountains doing adventure travel.
Okay, so all right, so you have this business, and so you take. So where do people come from that you host? How do they find you, and what do you actually do when people sign up to go on one of these explorations, I guess, with you?
Yeah. So a lot of people find us through Google or YouTube. I also have a YouTube channel as well. You guys can check that out. Not quite as big as Ray, but yeah, I just, I document my journeys as we travel around. A lot of our trips go to Everest Base Camp. So we start in Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, at about 12,000 feet, and we make our way up to Everest Base Camp at 17,000 feet, or about 5,100 meters. That's about a 10-day journey. So that's what a lot of people are doing. People want to see Everest. We're not climbing Everest. We're not going to the top. We're just basically taking pictures and running photography tours. We also do wildlife tours. We do snow leopard tours. There's the highest population of snow leopards in the world per capita right here in the province I live in, Qinghai province. So we go to the source of the Yellow River, take people to see the snow leopards there. So a lot of our trips are kind of, you could call them expedition, kind of wildlife type trips, photography trips. And they tend to be kind of middle to higher end. So it's people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that want to see some wild and beautiful places, want to do some day hikes, but also want a nice hotel at the end of the day as well. So, and of course, we also do hiking trips where we sleep in tents, but most of our customers are kind of in that kind of retired to semi-retired way of life, and just looking to kind of fulfill a bucket list item and see Mount Everest. So, yeah, that's a lot of who we host. A lot of those people are Americans, Europeans, yeah, Westerners. But then for us, we kind of have like a dual vision where obviously we're hosting Westerners in China, but we use that as a way to support local communities, local Tibetans, local nomads who don't have a lot of opportunities in China. And we're using the tourism to support them, to give them jobs, and basically raise up entire communities through tourism.
Okay. Yeah. Is there still conflict between China and Tibet going on? Is that an issue at all, or?
Yeah. Tibet is just considered a province of the nation of China. And basically, you to get into Tibet, you just need a tourist visa into China, just like you would any other part of China. And then you also need a special permit. But it's basically a special province of China.
I didn't even know, just clear this up for me. Excuse my ignorance, but like, I've done a few podcasts on Nepal and people go there for
Mm,
Everest. They go there for the big climb. You're saying that you can reach
right.
Everest on your end as well?
Yeah. So Everest and China, or I should say Nepal and China are actually neighbors, but they're split by the Himalayan range. So if you ascend Everest from Tibet or the China side, you can actually ascend the north face of Everest, which is actually a more difficult climb than Nepal. But 80% of mountaineers who do it actually go from Nepal. And the movies we see, like Into Thin Air and Everest, things
Yeah.
like that, they're all featuring traveling from the Nepal side, which is the much more popular and slightly legally easier side to climb from.
Okay, but there are people that go from the China side and it's much more
Yeah,
treacherous and difficult.
it's more treacherous, more expensive, logistically more intensive. You just don't have these huge Sherpa teams that have laid out all the lines for you like you do
Okay.
in Nepal. Really possible, but a little bit more for kind of the lone wolf rather than kind of the pack animal who wants to travel with a pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so have you ever climbed to the top of Everest yourself?
No, I have not. The
No.
tallest I've ever been is about 5,600 meters on a mountain called Kailash, and it's a mountain in western China. And that's not even the top of Kailash. That's just a pass
Yeah.
under Kailash. So that's about 18,000 feet, the tallest I've ever been. And that is the tiredest I've ever been in my life. And I'm probably not going to go too much higher than that. Once you start to get up that high, the oxygen is just really, really hard to breathe. And
Yeah.
then to think about going 1,000 meters taller than that is just, insane for me.
Yeah.
So
Do
yeah,
you
we just do backpacking. We don't do anything like crazy mountaineering stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so you've never done it where you're wearing an oxygen tank and going up. You don't.
No, no, I've never
Okay.
been that high. I mean, I've gotten light altitude sickness and seen the symptoms and things, but I've never been higher than 6,000 meters. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then when you said that you do some camping when you do some of these treks too and you sleep in a tent, do you ever have any issues sleeping in a tent?
Yeah, it's weird being at altitude. It's like you have these crazy dreams and you can't sleep. It's like you're so tired from walking all day and being at
Yeah.
altitude and you haven't been really well because you're getting less oxygen. And then you go to sleep and you're only sleeping like 1 or 2 hours a night. So yeah, a lot of times our trips to Everest Base Camp are beautiful. We wake up in the morning, we take this sunrise photo right of the Everest Massif. It's awesome, but you're only sleeping 1 or 2 hours a night. But it's kind of the cost to see Everest. So
Yeah, and see,
yeah.
as a guy, at me getting older, sleep becomes a little bit more challenging too, even in your own bed. So it's like I'm thinking,
Yeah.
wow, if you're gonna be trekking up Everest, you definitely want to make sure you get your sleep because the next day could even be that much more dangerous if you're not well slept.
True. Very true.
You,
Yeah. We encourage people not to drink alcohol until we're descending down from the Everest climb because altitude, it really messes with you. So, yeah, you got to
yeah.
be really careful.
Okay, so you're in a town called Xining, Xining.
Sheening,
Um,
right. Yeah. Hmm.
before we proceed, how do people find you again? What's the name on Google that they need to search in your YouTube channel?
Cool. Yeah. So my website's elevatedtrips.com, because we're going to high altitudes, elevatedtrips.com. My YouTube channel is just my name, which has been Ben Cubbage. And then our Instagram is elevated_trips. So feel free to follow us anywhere there. And we'd love to host you in China. It's a beautiful place, and I really love taking people out into these beautiful lands.
Okay. Before we dive into some of the cost of living and everything, you need a visa
Mhm.
to live there. A lot of the viewers
Yeah.
that watch my channel, they are retirees. They're people that want to slow travel.
Mhm.
They're young. A lot of them
Mhm.
are younger retirees in their 40s, 50s that are just
Mhm.
kind of,
Mhm.
saying, I'm going to take off and start living life. Um, what type of visa options are you aware of that's available to people like them?
Okay, that's a great question. So obviously, I have a registered travel agency, and that travel agency gives me a 1 year work visa, which I can renew in the country. It's about 150 US dollars every year to renew that visa.
Okay.
It was probably about 6 months of paperwork to to do that work visa. So I actually started my own business, which is one option for expats that want to live in a country. We put in probably about 30,000 US dollars to show some capital investment from the American side. And that basically kind of like floated our business for the first 2 years. So
Okay.
there's obviously some paperwork. We had to get an FBI background check. We had to get our marriage license authenticated by the Chinese embassy. Yeah, there's probably 10 or 15 different pieces of paper that we needed to do that. But about 8 years ago, we actually started a legitimate travel agency. So that's what gives us a work visa. So that's option one, is start your own business. Option two, which a lot of foreigners go into, also on a work visa, is they come and work under someone else. Now that's going to be a lot easier. You're working under a big Chinese kindergarten or a university, and that university is going to give you a work visa, a 1 year work visa, usually to teach English. It could be teaching in a profession if you're a professor in America. But that's another option, is you come in and work under a company. Expats also work for big engineering companies like Chevron, Exxon, car
Sure.
companies, tech companies, and there's a lot of expats that will come in and get that work visa as well. So those are kind of your options on work visa: either start your own business or work under a bigger business. Obviously, starting your own business gives you more freedom, but is a lot more headache as far as the legal stuff. So
Hmm.
yeah, so those are kind of the work visa options. And then the other visas are student visas. So, an easy way to be a student would be you could enroll at a Chinese university, and then basically you can study Chinese language, or there's 50 other ethnic languages. There's probably more than that in China that you can study, and you can actually study, and you can get your bachelor's, you can get a master's in Chinese. And that's a great way for people to land in China. Obviously, if you don't have any Chinese, that's what most people do first, because you
Hmm.
need the language before you start a business. So that's what we did. We studied the language for about 3-4 years under a bachelor's program, and then basically used that as kind of a platform to kind of launch our business. So that's the student visa, which is usually studying a language, or it doesn't have to
Hmm.
be a language, but it could be getting a degree as well.
Yeah. Do you know if
Yeah.
there's a retirement visa that's offered?
Not that I know of. So,
Yeah.
like Thailand has this thing where you can retire there. There's a lot of countries I see on your channel where you put in $300,000 into an investment property, and boom, suddenly you get this golden visa.
Hmm.
Sadly, I don't see anything like that in China. I do
Okay.
see people retiring in China, but the way that they're retiring is quite different than what you see in those other countries, where they're actually living on a tourist visa, which is a visa where you can come and go out of the country. You can be here as long as you want, but you have to leave usually about every 60 to 90 days. So
Yes.
if you have the money, you can fly from Beijing to Seoul in Korea in 2 to 3 hours, Beijing to almost anywhere in Southeast Asia in 2 or 3 hours. You can spend 60 or 90 days here, do a little visa run, come back. And I have seen people living for even 5 or 10 years on this tourist visa, and it's a good way to retire in China, but it does have the additional costs that you have to leave all the time, rather than having this like stability as far as
Yeah.
like a real retirement visa. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it. It sounds a lot like that's how Vietnam is set up too. They don't have a retirement visa, so a lot of people that live there do
Yeah.
3-month visa runs and then return just to renew the tourist visa. Okay, all right. Well, that's great
Yep.
information,
Same thing.
Ben. Yeah. All right. So when people in the U.S. think of China and what they see in the news, they say, no, we're just not going to do it. That's what makes you you are an absolute outlier because you're from America and
Mhm.
you live in China. So what is that is it safe for you? Do you have any concerns? And based on what we hear in the media, what's been your experience there?
Yeah, I'd say don't trust everything you see on TV. I
Yeah.
encourage people, come and travel to China and see for yourself. Because when we see nations on the media, we're seeing the political governments, but we're not understanding what really the local people are like. And when you come to China, you'll be so impressed by how wonderfully hospitable people are, how wonderful the culture is, warm, welcoming, just really, really great culture. There's a reason I lived here for 15 years. We do have hard days being expats in not our native country, but on the whole, we really love living in China, and I consider it extremely safe. You're talking about safety. I just sent my daughter in a taxi to school yesterday by herself. My daughter's 13 years old. She goes to international school here in China, which is mostly Westerners living here, a small international school. And I put her in a taxi by yourself. And that's because there's cameras everywhere. And a lot of people say, oh, China, you lose your privacy, da da da. And maybe that's true. But what you lose in privacy, you also gain in safety and security. And
Yeah.
that's why a lot of expats choose to move to China. They're just kind of tired, especially American expats. They're tired of the crime. They're tired of the political controversy with Trump. They're tired of, just so much arguing and infighting and guns and, just shootings and crime and the drug addiction in America. And all that doesn't exist in China because they have a really strong centralized government. There's cameras everywhere. Sure, I lose a little bit of privacy, but honestly, I'm not doing anything wrong. And there's probably no safer place to be in the world than in China as far as public security and crime and things. So there's no guns in China, and people just tend to kind of listen to the government. So there's 1.4 billion people, and most of them are pretty happy, pretty normal people, and yeah, it's a very very safe place to be.
And that's very
Yeah.
interesting. You know what's interesting? Just to kind of
Mm.
piggyback on what you said, just a few years ago, I spent some time in Cuba, and it was my very first time in Cuba. And I've been all over Latin America, all over. And I'm like going, okay,
Yeah.
so this is a very impoverished nation, but I've always wanted to go check it out, hang out, photograph. I did a lot of photography back in the day, and that was my primary reason just a few years ago to capture some photography. I walked all over Havana in areas that you won't see a tourist in at all.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
was absolutely shocked at how safe it was. And I talk to people about it, and I'm like going, I see these young kids and I see this, but I don't feel an element of danger like you do. Like when I used to hang out in Venezuela, like in Caracas, had this always this
Mhm.
element when I hung out in
Mhm.
Caracas
Mhm.
of a danger, it's a
Cool.
big
Oh
city and a
wow.
lot of
Okay.
stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I would
Yeah.
go into those areas too. And you just got to know how to navigate when you're there, which um, I did my best and never really had any issues, but I've never been to a safer place in all of Latin America, and I share that with people. So it's interesting,
Mhm.
that it's a communist nation. You're living in a communist nation, and you're saying we don't see the same
Mhm.
things that we're seeing constantly in the United States. And I'm not bashing the United States,
Mhm.
but it's the same thing there. There's not a lot of petty crime in Cuba. There's not a lot of activity that you see on the streets in the
Mhm.
United States. So it was fascinating to me. And other Latin American countries, it was really, really interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing
I've
that,
left my phone on a I've, just as an example, I've left my iPhone 16 on a restaurant table and, forgot it there and came back an hour later and it's still there. Uh,
yeah,
or, or, or the owner of the restaurant did it for me and gave it back to me. If that was in India, your phone would be gone, in just a
sure.
few minutes. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's cameras everywhere and for the most part, people are just law abiding and yeah, respect the law. So,
And that's exactly the way it is in South Korea too. Typically, if people
mm,
forget something or whatever, or you leave a wallet or something behind, you dropped it, people won't take the money
mm,
and they won't take the credit cards. They actually look for your ID and they'll
mm,
contact you to let you know that they found it. And when they return it, it has all the money in it. It's a different way of
mm.
life in
Yeah, yeah.
parts of Asia, and it's really
Mm,
very, very respectful. It's
mm.
wonderful to hear. So your kids are growing up in China, and they speak fluent Chinese now?
Yeah, they went to Chinese kindergarten, so they're, the only white face among 200 or 300 Chinese kids. So they were thrown in immediately when they're 3, 4 years old. From that time, they've been, I don't know if they're fluent, but they're conversational in Chinese. The taxi driver always says that their Chinese is better than mine, because kids just absorb language in a way
Right.
adults don't quite get. So yeah, they're really good. Their Chinese is great. I'm super proud of them. Honestly, I love living overseas. I love giving them the opportunity opportunities to see a culture that's not their own, to learn a language. Honestly, if you speak English and Chinese, you can talk to 85% of the world's population. So they're going to be set up
Oh,
well, whatever they do in life, that, it's going to give them a great platform as they move into college and the workforce.
I
Yeah.
absolutely. I always say to anybody, if you want the golden ticket in life, learn Chinese and learn English, and you're set. There will be plenty of
Yeah.
opportunities for
Yeah.
you. Yeah, that's
It's true.
great.
Those are both blessings. They open
Uh,
up a lot of doors. I've been traveling in Iceland, in the middle of nowhere of Iceland, and there's Chinese tourists there sitting next to me in a hot tub in Iceland. And so it's like they're, you know, they're the new money. They're the new travelers around the world. And it's the new norm that you're going to see a lot of Chinese people moving around the world, not only in tourism, but also in business. And learning Chinese is just only going to, help those opportunities. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. All right. Okay, so
Mhm.
all right, so you're situated, you're settled in. Do you rent a house or do you rent an apartment?
Yeah. Yeah. We rent for about 500 US dollars per month, which is, I think, pretty reasonable. We have a 150 square meter apartment. It's three
Wow.
bedrooms, two baths, so pretty nice. It's furnished like a kind of like a four-star, residential apartment. So yeah, it's nice. It's very modern. It was just furnished just a year or two ago. So yeah, we're happy. This same apartment in a city in America would probably be 2,000 to 3,000 US dollars a month. So we can live very cheaply here. Our dollar goes really far. It's 7 renminbi to one US dollar. So we just get a lot of bang for a buck, which helps us live here. And we can make a lower salary than we would in America, and live at a higher quality of life.
Yeah, and DC, I mean, something that size, you're looking at close to
Not cheap.
1,500 square foot apartment, three bedroom, two bath. You're looking at probably $6,000 a month, easy.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, especially around Alexandria
Yeah.
area, even more than that. But yeah,
Yeah, and you're paying $500 a month. That's incredible. Does
yeah.
that include any like utilities or any amenities?
So the apartment came 100% fully furnished, which was nice. So we didn't have to bring anything into it. Utilities are about 100 US dollars a month. So that's, electricity, water, things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, those are kind of our living costs. So it's, honestly, I think in my travel business, and my wife has a CrossFit gym. Between us, we make about 3,000 US dollars a month, and we live really comfortably in China. That stretches two or three times as far as it would in America. Whereas that would be a really small income, and I'd be kind of on the lower income bracket there. Here, we're kind of on the upper income bracket, and I probably live in one of the nicest houses in all my whole city. So
Hmm.
yeah, you just get more bang for your buck.
Yeah. And,
Mhm.
you mentioned that your kids go to an international school. Do the international schools, do they charge you
Yep.
to send your kids to those schools?
They do. They do. And
Okay.
traditionally, if you go to international school in a big city like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Seoul, Tokyo, these massive international schools, a lot of those kids are paying 30,000 to 50,000 US dollars per year for
Okay.
an elementary or high school international school education. Those schools are expensive. Our school is about probably one of the cheapest in Asia. I think it's about 1,000 US dollars per month, which it's still a cost, right? We still have to factor that in, but it's nowhere near what you'd pay living in Seoul for an upper echelon school. So
Did you,
yeah,
did,
actually, that's one thing I do in my business is I take international schools out, and we help them do these trips in Tibet where we learn about Tibetan culture and sustainability through nomads. So yeah,
okay.
so that's fun.
So what kind of a school is it? What kind of is it an American international school or?
Yeah, it's American Certified International School. There's only
Okay.
40 kids in the whole school from kindergarten to 12th. So, just think, little countryside schoolhouse. My son has maybe two other people in his whole class. So they're very, very intimate, very familiar, very, very high student to teacher ratio. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's a good thing for them. Yeah.
Okay. And you said that it's 1,000 a month or 1,000 per year
About 1,000 US dollars per month. So
per month
about 12,000 US dollars
per
per
year.
year. Yeah,
Okay.
1,000 US dollars per month times 12 months. So
Okay.
yeah, and then we have two kids. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, but if you that sounds like a lot of money to our ears, but if you any other international school in Asia is going to be probably more than that. So
Yeah. Yeah. And then did you guys ever consider like the public school options where you learn all in
it's not
Chinese?
allowed.
Oh, it isn't
It's not
allowed.
allowed. No, legally foreigners are not allowed, at least where we live, because we live in a really sensitive area of Western China and Tibet. Foreigners are not allowed to intermingle with Chinese. So we actually, I wanted to put my kids in local public school, A, because it was free, and B, because I wanted them to have a really good foundation of Chinese. And we tried, and they just said, sorry, we can't do it. So really, our only option for us is to put our kids in international school. We could homeschool, but obviously, me and my wife are both business owners, so we're not going to do that. So yeah, so international schools really is our only option.
Okay. All right. So let's look at some of the costs and things to do around there. So we broke down, you said you pay about $100 for utilities per month. How much for
Mhm.
Wi-Fi and
Mhm.
cell phone do you pay per month?
Not much. Cell phones probably about $20 a month, really
Okay.
cheap. And I don't think I've ever run out of the 5G coverage is incredible. China being a huge tech hub has cell
Yeah.
phone towers everywhere, and it's really great connectivity. So that's one great thing about China. You don't have the power outages like you would in Nepal. So constant cell phone reception, very very steady, very good. Even in the middle of Tibet, I can call my wife from Everest Base Camp. The reception's really good. So that's $20 a month. And then taxis, to take a taxi in our city is about $1 to $3 anywhere in the city. So that's pretty cheap. An Uber would be like, it's like $50 to take an Uber to go 10 minutes in America. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I think I traveled from DC down to Alexandria, and it was like $250. So
Yeah.
yeah, the taxis are dirt cheap, a dollar, a couple dollars for a taxi.
Yeah. Is that how you get around? You don't have a vehicle? You rely on taxis?
I do have a car actually. Yeah, because I have a travel business. It's helpful for me to have a car because I need to go and scout in the mountains and build relationships with the communities and be out in the mountains as a guide. So it's helpful for us to have a car. Also, our family enjoys backpacking and camping, and it's good for us to get out of the city a bit. But the great thing about China is you don't have to have a car. I like having a car because I'm a tour guide, but a lot of expats in China don't because the public transportation system here is just so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, subways, buses, it's all there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then you had to get a license, a driver's license, and you had to purchase a vehicle. Did you purchase used? Did you purchase new? What are the
That's right.
costs going for
Yeah.
over there? And how do you get a license?
That's great. Good question. So I have an American driver's license. So I didn't have to take the physical driving part, but you do have to take a computer test, which is just a 100 answer test with that's all multiple questions, multiple choice questions. So it's fairly simple, but the questions were 10 years ago when I took it were so badly translated that I had no idea what the questions were saying. They have an English version of the test, but it didn't make any sense at all. So and there are 100 questions are actually drawing from a bank of 1,000 questions. So because of the bad translation, I actually failed the test 5 times. And it's
Mm,
not that I'm a bad driver; it's just the test was it's kind of arbitrary. It doesn't really have anything to do with real driving.
yeah.
But eventually, after the fifth time, I passed the computer test, got my license, and now I have a driver's license in China, which is nice. I like
Uh,
driving around.
So you passed it after 5 times.
5 times. Yeah, it took a while, but my wife passed it the first time because I told her all the mistakes I made.
Or
Yeah,
maybe Ben, maybe she's just smarter.
she she is. She's a lot smarter. That's why she married me. Talking about costs of vehicles. So, China does have an import tax. So if you
Yeah.
buy local, if you buy like a brand like Build Your Dream, BYD, that's getting big. There's a lot of Chinese electric brands that are really blowing up, and China's really pushing the envelope of electronic technology. If you buy local, you can probably pay 15 to 20,000 US dollars
Okay.
for a brand new SUV. And that's not like a Mercedes or it's not high end. It's kind of like more of a Kia range type vehicle, but they're making some amazing cars. And but then if you buy an imported car, you're going to pay about 1.5 times the price of what you'd pay in America for a similar new car. So like
Hmm.
for instance, yeah, a BMW might go for $45,000 in America, and in China it'd be something like $60,000. But
Yeah. Yeah.
China's they got a lot of money, and they're buying all the imported goods, and they like the fancy cars. So yeah.
You know what I'm really fascinated with right now? I can do like these deep dive on in videos on YouTube. And when I
Yeah.
have nothing to do, I'm looking at all of these cool flying cars that are coming out of like
Mm.
China. They look like drones, and people, two
Yeah.
people or one person could get in, and they take off, they fly around. They're the flying cars. They can be on a regular road, or
Yeah.
they can fly above
Mhm.
everything, and they're just unbelievable. That I'm like going, it's already here. They're already selling these vehicles, and you don't even need to get licensed as a pilot to fly these things. I'm like going, this
Mhm.
is awesome. I want one of these. And then you hear the price tag of like $500,000 for these cars. I'm like, okay, so we got to wait a couple years before they come down in price.
Yeah. Another great thing about China, they're on the forefront of technology. They got a huge workforce, 1 billion people, and they're all pushing the envelope of technology. They just let Americans invent the technology, and then they just copy it and make it better. So yeah, China's doing great on the electric car front. Some the biggest brands in the world that sell more cars than any brand in America are actually Chinese, and most people have never even heard of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And it's like, but when I was living in South Korea, I was blown away by how technologically advanced they were than the US. I was just blown away how
Mm.
far ahead of the times they were, you know, as compared to the U.S. It was just shocking to me, and I think China is a lot like the same thing. You come from the America, and if you can't see it and experience it, it's a vast difference. The technology is everything. Things are lit up, beaming and glowing, and there's all kinds of like the
Mm.
phones were so advanced at the time too when I was there that I was just blown away. Um, so yeah, it's something to see. It's definitely very different. Okay, so now let's talk about restaurants because everybody everywhere loves Chinese food.
Mm.
So, and when you
Yeah.
go out and get a good Chinese meal around here, even at a cheap place nowadays, you're going to pay about 15 bucks. What do you pay for a meal for a
Mhm.
great Chinese meal where you're at?
Yeah. One thing I love about China is you can eat really cheap and some of the best food in the world. Um, just a plate of steamed dumplings could be $1, and that could feed 2 or 3 people. And then you have a bowl of noodles could be $1 to $2. Where we live in Western China is very famous for their hand pulled noodles, their
Ooh.
Lanzhou noodle mian. And yeah, those are really good. And it's only $2, for a bowl that's bigger than my head.
Mm,
And it's a huge bowl. So and some of the they're literally pulling the noodles right in front of you, and then they put them in the broth, and then you're eating them 5 seconds later. So
mhm.
super fresh, super. So it's possible to eat really cheap. China's everything's available. If I want to go to Starbucks and spend $6 on a coffee, I can do that. So if you want to spend a lot of money, you can. If you want to eat really cheap, you could probably get away with $5 to $10 a day if you're a college student
Mhm.
on a budget. So there's a little bit of something for everyone.
Okay. And do they have like pubs and bars and cafes where you're at nearby?
They do. Yeah, yeah. So coffee is getting, coffee really just entered the Chinese consciousness maybe 10 to 15 years ago. So,
Okay.
it's definitely more of a relaxed coffee culture where it's like a social thing rather than like, let's drink coffee at 6 a.m. to wake up to get for work. Most coffee shops in China probably don't even open until 10 o'clock in the morning. So they don't have that early morning coffee culture. And so the young kids are drinking coffee, 25, 30 years old. It's kind of a cool new thing. But, grandma, grandpa, 60, 70 years old, probably staying with the tea and not drinking coffee.
Yeah. How much can you get a beer for in one of those bars or cafes?
Yeah. Let's see. I don't, I got a family, so I don't frequent the bar scene too much, but probably about $3 to $5, I think, for a beer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
depending. It's going to be more in a nice bar in Shanghai, but um, yeah.
All right. And then as far as things to do, you guys are adventurers. You're always outdoors. But as far as things to do in this part of China, entertainment wise, what does it have to offer? And if there's a cost to it, let us know. Do they have galleries? Do they have any theater? Do they have, amenities that young people can participate in or get actively engaged in?
Yep. There are theaters here. Of course, there's movie theaters or opera theaters, music theaters. We kind of live in the Wild West, which a lot of Shanghai, Beijing people kind of consider relatively undeveloped or relatively uncivilized compared to the bigger cities that have the technology and stuff. So we don't have the amenities of Beijing and Shanghai, Guangzhou. But that's what I like. It's simple, it's low key. The things that we do here, basically just hanging out with friends, going out to nature. A lot of Chinese like to do the karaoke. That's kind of one of their, their big things is for fun times with friends, is you go out to hot pot or you go out to karaoke. So those are kind of like the social interactions we have. I wouldn't say there's a multitude of like things like you're gonna have in like New York City, where it's just like it's all right there.
Yeah.
But it's kind of make your own fun. Go out with friends, have a picnic, things like that.
Okay. And do you participate in the karaoke, Ben, yourself?
I've been to karaoke a few times. It is fun. You rent a room, so it's a private room, whereas karaoke in America is like a public kind of bar thing. You rent a private room with 5 or 10 of your good friends, and then you just pick your song, and then you just go at it all night long. So it's pretty fun because it's like a private event and like kind of a dark private room. So yeah, karaoke is fun. It's a fun thing to do on your birthday or something if you want to go out.
Can you sing us a song of one of your favorites?
Oh man, I didn't know that was gonna. I don't know too many Chinese songs. I only know. But okay. Here's my go-to karaoke song. It's got to be Backstreet Boys. You are my fire, my one desire. Believe when I say I want it
It
that
that
way.
way.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
that's
smooth,
my
man.
if I gotta, yeah.
That
I wasn't prepared, but that's my go-to
you got a
karaoke song.
smooth voice there, buddy. You got a smooth. That's sounded good.
I don't know, man. But
Well, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun there, and it sounds like you definitely made China your home, and it's really awesome. The really the last the thing I
Mhm.
always cover the last is for people that are interested in moving to China. They want to know what the healthcare is
Mhm.
like, the quality of the healthcare, and how much it costs.
Mhm.
What can you share on that?
Yeah. So yeah, great question, Ray. Once again, just like the food situation, you can go to Beijing United Hospital and get a higher quality of medical care than you would in America. But you're going to pay a premium for it. Like if you want
Okay.
a cancer treatment or whatever you need at the hospital, there's hospitals in Beijing and Shanghai that are really, really great. They almost exclusively serve expats, but they're very expensive. And then on the other end, you kind of have the Chinese public hospitals, which are, I would say, definitely subpar to American medical care. Their medical care definitely feels, I'd say, maybe 30 years behind where we're at in America. But it's dirt cheap. So, it's dirty, it's chaotic, it's people
Yeah.
waiting in line, and it's a little bit crazy. But I think I got stitches in my head at one point. A shelf had fallen on my head, and I had to go get stitches in my head. I went to the doctor. The doctor said, "Do you want a big scar or a small scar?" And I said, "Well, probably a small scar." So then I had to kind of do a scavenger hunt around the hospital. I had to go buy my own stitches on the 5th floor and walk back down to the 1st floor and buy these different medicines and things. And he got the job done. But yeah, I mean, he was literally smoking a cigarette like above my head, like while he was like stitching my
Wow.
head together. Like there's like ashes like falling into my head. So, and
Yeah.
the hospital room just wasn't very clean. There's blood from the former patient on the bed and things. So, that's if you go to Chinese public hospital, that's what you're going to see. So, um, if I was an expat, I would go. If you had the money, I would go for the nicer hospitals. If you're looking for that level of care, if you're looking to save a lot of money, you can get the same things done, but you don't quite get the quality of care that you would in America.
Yeah. Wow. So do you have any idea? Can you buy an insurance in China to cover you in case something catastrophic happens or?
So what I do, um, I actually have an American insurance plan that covers expats living overseas, and that's what I'd recommend is actually buying insurance from your home country. Honestly, anything that we pay for at the Chinese hospital, I just had a full medical check done, for blood test, everything, just this week actually, and I think it was only maybe about 30 to be able to do that. So anything that we get in China, we usually just pay out of pocket because it's so cheap.
Okay.
But if anything big happened, we do have our insurance back. to
Okay,
cover that.
so and that when
Yeah.
you went to do that physical, you said it cost you $30?
Yeah, that's right. For a whole several hours of tests, and the whole gamut, ultrasounds, blood tests, and anything you can imagine, brain tests, EKGs, things like that. So
Did
yeah.
you use your insurance that you currently have, the American insurance, to cover that cost?
I didn't. They might cover it, but for $30, I'm just going to pay out of my
Okay.
pocket, not bother with the paperwork trail. So
Okay,
yeah.
so you're using the American insurance for some catastrophic thing that happens. Who are you using? What
Right.
company?
So, oh man, gosh, I don't actually know.
Don't
My
know.
wife actually
Okay.
pays the insurance.
Okay.
But if you want, I that information. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd
But
be
they spec insurance, so you can just look that up on Google. Expat insurance. So,
yeah. Okay. So you're just
mm,
primarily, Ben,
yeah,
you're paying out of pocket in China because it's incredibly affordable, but you're not going to get
mm,
the type of quality that
right.
you experience in the United States. It's not there.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially where I live in Western China, the hospital civil. It just it's not. I don't look forward to going to the hospital, but if you break your leg, they'll get the job done, and they'll make it.
Mhm.
But yeah. Another example is my daughter Phoebe. She broke her wrist doing some exercise a couple months back, and the doctor wanted to put a pin in her wrist, which is a normal procedure to straighten out a bone. But the pin he wanted to put in, actually, he wanted to have it sticking out and have basically an open air wound existing for a couple months in her wrist, which I didn't think was particularly hygienic or healthy. And we consulted a couple different doctors, and they said that was not a good idea to have an open wound with a rod sticking right out of your bone. So we switched hospitals and found a different place to do it. But that just kind of gives you an idea of like a little bit of the mentality of the hospital here.
Yeah, something to definitely be
Yeah.
concerned, consider. And I guess I'd be concerned a little bit about that too. So it sounds like you just need to do your research and talk to a few doctors and then figure out which one best fits your needs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now that you've been there for 15 years,
Yeah. That's right.
you've been there for 15 years. What is the biggest surprise of living there that you've experienced overall?
Yeah. I like living in China. Obviously, I lived here 15 years, and our family, that's what we know. The couple things that probably surprised me, privacy issue. Being a foreigner, especially in Western China, most of these people have never seen a white face before, blonde hair, blue eyes is kind of new for them. So it's not uncommon that people walk up to my kids and kind of pet my kids or kind of pick them up and take photos with them. And that can get, it's novel at first, but that can get a little bit old. Yeah, especially now that our kids are 12 and 13 years old. It's not quite as cute. But our kids did start charging the Chinese people to actually take a picture of them. Every time the Chinese wanted to take a picture, they charged 5 or 10 kuai and made a little bit of money from it. But the privacy issue here is it can be a difficult one for expats, especially foreigners, because Chinese people have black hair and brown eyes. To see a different color skin for them, it's not disrespectful, it's not rude. They're
Yeah.
not even being angry or mean. They're just being curious.
Curious,
And
yeah.
so a lot of times, well, people come and feel my beard because that's interesting for them. I have kind of hairy arms. They feel my arms. um so yeah, it's not uncommon to kind of get like
Mhm.
yeah, have people be really curious about who you are and what is it, this white skin and this fur like. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And from what you remember living in the US, it's been a while for you, but what's the biggest trade? What is the biggest difference between living in the United States and living in China that you noticed?
Well, talking about the privacy thing, in America, you just fit in. There's Chinese people everywhere. There's Indians everywhere. There's, people, of all ethnicities everywhere. In America, no one bats an eyelash if you're a
Yeah.
different skin color. But you know, it's not quite the same. So in America, it's easy to blend in. In China, you don't. And if you ever needed a good boost for your self-esteem, you should move to China because everyone will think you'll be this tall, gorgeous person that everyone is taking pictures of. Um, but yeah, so that's the difference. And then of course, the money is a difference. The biggest difference really for me is that America is a hyper individual country, and China is a hyper communal country. Even the communism, the system of government is all about like, let's work together. Let's obey. Let's be a group together. Whereas Americans are so individualistic. We have to radically have our rights at any cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I really see that difference in the Chinese versus American mentality, and both of them have their advantages and their strong points. They both have their weaknesses as well. So it's really interesting for me to see the Chinese culture, which is all about that community life. Things that we wouldn't do in America, you would do in China because it's all about respecting your elders or being part of a bigger story than yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well said. That's well said, Ben. Well, that's everything I have. Is there anything else that you could think of that we didn't discuss that could be helpful for the viewers that are considering maybe traveling to China? Maybe they want to trek up Everest, but they are scared, or maybe they really want to take the leap and go, I've always loved Chinese culture. I love the food. The people are incredibly friendly.
Mm.
I want to go there. And I love the
Mm.
idea of the affordability. Anything else come to mind that you could share that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I mean, you just hit that really on the head, is that you have this crazy mix of like modern versus ancient. You have one of the oldest writing systems in the world, over 4,000 years old. Some people even say 5,000 years old, the Chinese characters. And then you're seeing some of the biggest, brightest, most beautiful skyscrapers right there. So you have the Forbidden City, and these ancient structures that are 4,000 years old, thousands of years old, with this old language right next to this like hyper modern culture, and it's a really interesting juxtaposition. I personally like it a lot. There's something here for everyone. If you're into history, there's lots of history. If you're into modern technology, there's that. So I just encourage people to come and see it, because it's a totally different beast than what we expect it to be from American media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ben Cubbage, thank you so much, man, for all of this information and sharing your experience and story in China. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. I love living in China, and I just encourage people to travel the world and to see it, because you can't really understand, you can't really post about it on Facebook until you've been there and really met the people and been on the ground.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Ben, we're going to put the links in the description below so people can reach out to you and find you. And just thanks again for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ray, for what you're doing to encourage travel and expat life, and I'm a big fan. So you definitely have a subscriber in me.